We, the people of the shackled and sold and new land movers, literally the cotton pickers, tobacco growing, abused, raped and beaten, the demolished, the broken bones but never broken spirit. We, the given the worst and made it the best. Where you think soul food came from?
Here we are, moving towards the headwaters of Shoal Creek, going back in our history, back into the old days at the beginnings of Austin, Black Austin, Texas. Back in the 1830s, Anglo settlers first came to this area. It was a area peopled by native people, and they came as pioneers. Sounds like a noble thing to be, and when we think about pioneers, maybe we think about Davy Crockett and his white manhood coming on the scene. But these pioneers didn't just come to carve something out of the wilderness in a heroic way. These pioneers came to Texas from elsewhere looking for wealth, and the source of that wealth that they came here was the land, and the attraction of Texas. Central Texas is where we're at, so the attraction of Central Texas was cheap land, right? Because it could be easily taken, or not easily, but it was taken from those who had been here before, and the land could be put into cotton and other things, but cotton was the major source of wealth. But there's a problem for pioneers who arrive on the scene to appropriate cheap land to get wealthy off the growing of cotton. And that problem is that in order to get wealthy, they weren't prepared to do the labor themselves, nor could they get wealthy without having other folks do that labor. And the folks who were chosen to do that labor, through a complex history, were us. And these enslaved people included Orange and his brother Reuben, and some other family members were able to amass enough resources to buy some land further north, up somewhere around Duval Street, right? So that's up around where 183 and Loop 1 meet. Right? And they were able to buy some property, and they were able to set up a number of different farms up there. It was in the area between the really small town of Duval and the small town of Water Park in that area. Water Park was built by the railroads when they came in the 1880s. And there they were able to set up a farming community, a black farming community, a freedom community.
Black B, born brilliant, be royalty walking, be the reason the sun chose to rise, be the star-filled night. Now tell me again how heaven ain't black.
A shoal is a deposit of sediment in a waterway. So when water flows really, really quickly and then it slows down, whatever sediment it's carrying, it deposits. That sediment could be sand, it could also be rocks. So if you look out over this creek, particularly right down here, you can see what's a shoal. A shoal, all that rock sediment right there. So if you were to walk up and down Shoal Creek, you'd see all of these shoals at intervals, and that's where it gets its name from. Back in the day, there was, before they dammed Town Lake, when the Colorado River was still a river, there was a shoal right at the mouth of Shoal Creek, and that formed a natural ford over the river that indigenous people used to cross the river. They would cross the river and they would walk up Shoal Creek, up as far north as 34th Street, and then they would cut into the mountains. That was quite a well-known indigenous trail, and the remnants of that trail is this hike and bike path right here.
We offer you this water, answer. We offer you this water. We offer you this water on this day, and we ask you for your divine blessings. Help us to find the understanding that water brings. Help us to understand. Help us to understand each other again. Help us to receive the love that each other has for each other. Help us to see the God in each other.
I think it appropriate that we have poured libations and created a blessing of this space upon a rock, a stone, as I study the built environment, architecture, the builders, the African American men and women labored in this area and just across Shoal Creek. But they used the materials of the creek, the soil, the water, to create the bricks. It became the foundation for Austin, the foundation for generations of families. People were enslaved by the Peases in this area, including the park where we are now standing, and they migrated. We not only have the communities we know about in East Austin, or what became East Austin, but a sizable community that developed here just across these waters that established that community. Among them were Jacob Fontaine and his family, and they had associations with the Peases. His wife was a cook for the Pease family. The landowners, including a Judge Thomas, Samuel Haney, and others, also began to parcel off property and sell it to enslaved persons, or formerly enslaved persons, freedmen, not only from possibly the Pease plantation, but other farms, farmsteads, plantations in and around Austin. And in the 1870 census, many of the black men who were engaged in the building trades as carpenters, as stonemasons, brick masons, to a certain extent individuals like plasterers, blacksmiths, anybody who would have in some way, shape, or form had their hands on constructing buildings and infrastructure here in Austin. Most of those men by the 1870 census were living in Wheatville.
We, the people, gathered in the center of the world. We, the people of the continent, children of the Nile Valley, the people sitting in the center of the beginning of it all, the Alpha and the Omega, the once we divinity digesting us, the architect of it all, the ones who got mathematicians and scientists still trying to figure out how we formulated the pyramids. We, the people of the cooked food while Europeans were not. We, the people of the great societies, the people of the still standing laws. Greeks could only translate our first 10, and those became commandments.
Clarksville was founded in 1871 by Charles Griffin Clark. He purchased that land, by the way. I know there's a narrative that was given to him. He purchased that land. It was a small, close-knit community, survived and weathered so many storms, right? But many of the residents of Clarksville were either descendants and originally had been enslaved by Pease and other plantations in, and around Austin. And as well, Austin at that time was seen as a safe space for many folks, who had been enslaved at one point in Lockhart and Bastrop and these other places. So many people flocked to Austin for that reason, for looking for family. So, people from other freedom colonies came over to Clarksville as well.
At one time, Austin was somewhere between 30 and 40% black. There were black people living in this area as free people, but there were also black people living in this area in the basin of Shoal Creek.
I encourage you to think about the ancestors and their creating of those foundations, the foundations that they created, whether they are extant or not in other parts of the city of Austin, as we work to preserve the collective memory of black people along Shoal Creek, along Waller Creek, throughout areas of Austin.
We've been ushered out of the places that we've occupied when they become valuable to those who can usher us out. And one of the things that we need to remember to do is that we deserve these places. We have inhabited these places. We've lived in these places. We struggled in these places. We've had joy in these places, and we need to make sure that we not only remember that, but that we reestablish our presence here. But there wasn't just slavery here. There were enslaved people here, all right, who had lives and dreams and hopes and loves, and there were the freedom folks afterwards. We were here. We occupy this space. The libations and the drummers reawakened them. It's incumbent upon us to re-inhabit these spaces, to reclaim these spaces, to make sure that we're not forgotten, to make sure that the social memory of our struggle and our joy lives on in the spaces where our spirit still inhabits.
Be born, be beautiful, be bountiful, be us, be afraid, be unafraid to walk like we walk and talk like we talk. Be a haircut, long braided, faded, dyed, locked in all styles in between. Be this moment right now. Be honoring the past to protect the future. Be born. Please don't be afraid to be black.